The skeletal remains of skyscrapers clawed at a bruised, perpetually overcast sky. Below, the bombed-out cityscape was a labyrinth of rubble and despair, a testament to the HFY War's devastating victory. Dust, the color of ash, coated everything, clinging to broken buildings and the tattered remnants of what was once a thriving metropolis. The air hung heavy with the ghosts of the fallen, a somber atmosphere that permeated everything. Here, in this desolate wasteland, survival was a brutal, solitary game. Mark navigated the treacherous terrain with a practiced ease born of necessity. He was a scavenger, a ghost among the ruins, searching for anything of value amidst the debris. His movements were cautious, his senses always alert for danger, be it raiders or lingering KRYL drones. He moved with the grim determination of a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose but his life. Scars crisscrossed Mark's face, a roadmap of battles fought and survived. His eyes, once bright with hope, were now weary pools reflecting the grayness of his surroundings. They held a haunted quality, betraying the trauma he carried deep within. He wore scavenged clothing, layers of patched-up fabrics providing meager protection against the elements. His home was a makeshift shelter constructed within the hollowed-out husk of an old subway station, a dark and damp refuge from the dangers above. Life after the KRYL War had hardened Mark, stripping away any semblance of idealism or compassion. He trusted no one, relied on no one. The past was a closed book, its pages filled with painful memories he desperately tried to bury. He existed solely in the present, focused on the daily struggle for survival. The war had taken his family, his friends, his future. It had left him with nothing but the scars and the gnawing emptiness of a broken soul. During a scavenging run through the ruins of an old postal depot, Mark stumbled upon an anomaly, a cache of old mail, miraculously untouched by the ravages of war. Most of the envelopes were addressed to long-gone residents, their lives extinguished by the KRYL onslaught. He initially dismissed the pile as worthless, another grim reminder of what had been lost. But then, one envelope caught his eye. The name on the envelope was his own, Mark. It was addressed in elegant, flowing script, a stark contrast to the harsh reality of his current existence. The sight of his name, written with such care, triggered a flicker of something long dormant within him, a faint echo of a past he thought he had erased. He hesitated, his hand trembling slightly as he reached for the letter. Opening the letter meant confronting the past, dredging up memories he had fought so hard to suppress. It meant acknowledging the pain and loss he had tried to bury. But the curiosity was too strong to resist. He turned the envelope over in his calloused hands, examining the postmark. It was dated over 30 years ago, long before the war. The sender's name was printed neatly in the corner, Nurse Ilara, Andromedan Confederacy Medical Corps. The name felt distantly familiar, like a half-forgotten dream. Who was she, and why had she written to him? If you're intrigued by Mark's past and the secrets this letter holds, subscribe to see what happens next. Mark stared at the name, Ilara, replaying in his mind. A faint image flickered, a sterile white room, the beeping of machines, and a gentle voice speaking words of comfort. The image was fragmented, indistinct, like a half-remembered dream. He struggled to grasp the memory, to bring it into sharper focus, but it remained elusive, just beyond his reach. He could almost feel a comforting touch, a soothing presence that eased his pain. Could this Ilara be the source of that fleeting memory? The KRYL War had been more than just a physical conflict. It was a psychological obliteration. The sheer scale of the KRYL invasion, the relentless brutality of their attacks, and the staggering loss of life had left an indelible scar on humanity. Millions perished, entire cities were reduced to rubble, and the very fabric of society was torn apart. The war had not only destroyed lives but also memories, identities, and the will to hope. For Mark, the war had been a personal apocalypse. He had witnessed horrors that no one should ever have to see, endured hardships that no one should ever have to endure. The trauma had shattered his mind, creating a wall between him and his past. He had become a survivor, stripped bare of his former self, driven only by the instinct to survive. The letter from Alara threatened to breach that wall, to force him to confront the memories he had worked so hard to suppress. He carefully tore open the aged envelope. Inside, the paper was brittle and yellowed with age. The ink had faded slightly, but the words were still legible. He unfolded the letter with trembling hands and began to read. "Dear Mark," Alara wrote, "I am writing to you to express my deepest admiration for your bravery and resilience during this difficult time. Your courage in the face of adversity has been an inspiration to us all." He paused, confused. Bravery? Resilience? These words seemed foreign, detached from the hardened cynic he had become. The letter continued, "I know that you have suffered greatly, but I want you to know that you are not alone. We are doing everything we can to help you recover, both physically and emotionally. I made you a promise, Mark, and I intend to keep it, no matter what." A promise? What promise? He had no recollection of making any promises to an alien nurse 30 years ago. The words felt like a cruel joke, a twisted mockery of his broken existence. Mark felt a rising tide of confusion and disturbance. Why would an alien nurse write to him, a human soldier? What was the significance of this promise? And why after all this time? The questions swirled in his mind, creating a vortex of uncertainty. He reread the letter, searching for clues, for some explanation that would make sense of this bizarre situation. He found himself increasingly fixated on the letter, neglecting his usual scavenging routine. The ruins around him faded into the background as he became consumed by the mystery of Alara and her promise. He spent hours poring over the faded words, trying to decipher their meaning. He needed answers, even if they dredged up painful memories he had desperately tried to bury. The hunt for scrap, for food, for survival took a back seat. A fierce internal debate raged within him. Should he seek Alara out? Was it even possible? 30 years had passed, the HFY war had ravaged the galaxy, and the Andromedan Confederacy was scattered, if not destroyed. The idea seemed absurd, a fool's errand. Yet the warmth of Alara's words, the faint echo of her comforting presence, pulled him in with an irresistible force. He felt a sense of obligation, a need to understand the connection between them, even if it meant confronting the ghosts of his past. Mark decided to find Alara. It was a long shot, a near impossible quest in a galaxy scarred by war, but the letter had ignited a spark within him, a flicker of hope he hadn't felt in decades. He would start his search, even if it led him to the far reaches of known space. His journey began with fragmented data, the digital remnants of a world that no longer existed. He scavenged for old computers, damaged hard drives, anything that might contain information about the Andromedan Confederacy Medical Corps. His makeshift shelter transformed into a makeshift research center, cluttered with salvaged electronics and tangles of wires. He spent days hunched over flickering screens, his eyes burning with exhaustion as he sifted through corrupted files and garbled transmissions. The task was frustratingly slow, hampered by technical difficulties and the scarcity of information. Most of the data was irretrievable, lost forever to the ravages of war. But Mark persevered, driven by a newfound sense of purpose. Slowly, painstakingly, he began to piece together fragments of information. He learned about the Andromedan Confederacy, a coalition of alien species united by a commitment to peace and cooperation. He discovered that the Andromedan Medical Corps had played a crucial role in the HFY war, providing medical assistance to both human and alien soldiers. They were renowned for their advanced technology and their compassionate care. They were healers in a galaxy consumed by violence. He also uncovered the devastating losses suffered by the Andromedan Confederacy during the war. Their homeworlds had been ravaged, their fleets decimated, and their people scattered across the galaxy. Their fate was largely unknown, a grim testament to the HFY's destructive power. Some believed that the Confederacy had been completely destroyed, its surviving members either assimilated by other powers or wiped out entirely. But then, amidst the digital wreckage, Mark found a glimmer of hope. A single, heavily corrupted file hinted at the existence of a potential refugee colony established by surviving Andromedans on a remote, uncharted planet. The file was incomplete, its data fragmented and distorted, but it contained enough information to pique his interest. It mentioned a star system located far beyond the known boundaries of explored space, a system shrouded in mystery and rumored to be hidden from the KRYL. The odds were astronomically against him. The information was unreliable, the journey would be perilous, and the chances of finding anything were slim to none. But Mark saw it as his only chance, his only lead in the search for Ilara. He had nothing left to lose, and everything to gain. He would follow this thread, no matter how tenuous, to the very end. He would risk everything to uncover the truth about Ilara and his own forgotten past. With his decision made, Mark turned his attention to the practicalities of the journey. He needed a ship, supplies, and a plan. His current transport was a battered, barely functional freighter he had salvaged from a scrapyard years ago. It would require extensive repairs and modifications to withstand the rigors of interstellar travel. He began scavenging for spare parts, scouring the ruins for anything that could be used to upgrade his ship. He needed fuel, food, and water, enough to last for months, possibly years, depending on how long it took him to find the uncharted planet. He also needed weapons, to defend himself against raiders, pirates, or any other threats he might encounter along the way. The post-war world was a dangerous place, and he would have to be prepared for anything. As he gathered his supplies, repaired his ship, and prepared for the unknown, he knew he was embarking on a journey that would change his life forever. The ship, affectionately nicknamed Rusty by Mark due to its perpetually corroded state, demanded constant attention. Scavenging for compatible parts became a daily ritual, each successful find a small victory against the overwhelming odds. He replaced cracked plating with salvaged metal, welded loose wires, and coaxed life back into sputtering engines. The air inside the cramped vessel reeked of ozone, burnt lubricant, and a faint, lingering scent of decay, a grim cocktail of survival. Rationing was crucial. Nutrient paste, tasteless but essential, became his primary source of sustenance. He meticulously calculated the amount of recycled water he could afford to use, every drop precious. The difficulty of the task was immense, amplified by the ever-present danger. Raiders, bands of ruthless survivors, roamed the wasteland, preying on the weak and vulnerable. They were a constant threat, their eyes always scanning the horizon for easy targets. They were the vultures circling the dying carcass of Earth. As Mark was siphoning fuel from a derelict tanker, a group of raiders materialized from the shadows. 5 figures, clad in scavenged armor and armed with makeshift weapons, surrounded him. Their leader, a hulking brute with a cybernetic eye and a cruel smirk, stepped forward. Well, what have we here?" he growled, his voice raspy from years of hardship and violence. "Looks like we found ourselves a little rat, trying to steal our fuel." Mark remained calm, his hand instinctively reaching for the plasma pistol concealed beneath his tattered jacket. He knew he was outnumbered, but he wouldn't go down without a fight. "This ain't your fuel," Mark said, his voice low and steady. "It's salvage. Finders keepers." The raider leader laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Finders keepers? That's a good one. Around here, we take what we want. And right now, we want your fuel, your ship, and anything else you got." A tense standoff ensued, the air thick with anticipation. Mark knew that any wrong move could be his last. He had to be smart, fast, and ruthless. With a sudden burst of speed, Mark drew his plasma pistol and fired. The shot hit one of the raiders square in the chest, sending him sprawling. The other raiders reacted instantly, unleashing a volley of gunfire. Mark ducked behind the fuel tanker, bullets ricocheting off the metal. He returned fire, taking down another raider with a well-aimed shot. But he was running out of cover, and the raiders were closing in. He narrowly escaped the raiders' ambush, managing to disable their vehicle with a well-placed shot before fleeing in Rusty. The ship sustained heavy damage, its hull riddled with bullet holes and its engines sputtering erratically. The incident served as a stark reminder of the dangers that lay ahead and the price of survival in this broken world. He couldn't afford to be complacent. A brief, vivid flashback pierced his thoughts. He was lying on a battlefield, his body racked with pain. The air was thick with smoke and the screams of the dying. He could feel the searing heat of plasma fire, the metallic tang of blood in his mouth. Andromedan medics, their faces obscured by their helmets, were rushing towards him, their voices a calming presence amidst the chaos. He remembered a gentle touch, a soothing voice, and a sense of hope amidst the despair. As he steered Rusty through the treacherous debris field, Mark reflected on the raiders, the war, and the long, arduous journey ahead. He had seen the worst of humanity, the depths of depravity to which people could sink when driven by desperation and greed. But he had also witnessed acts of courage, compassion, and selflessness, even in the darkest of times. He owed it to Alara, to the medics who had saved his life, to find some meaning in this post-war world. He owed it to himself to discover the truth about his forgotten past. With a final surge of power, Rusty broke free from Earth's orbit and embarked on its perilous journey into uncharted space. Mark watched as the ruins of Earth receded into the distance, a silent testament to the devastation of war. He was leaving behind the only world he had ever known, venturing into the unknown in search of a forgotten promise. His heart was filled with a mixture of hope, fear, and grim determination. The journey would be long and dangerous, but he was ready for whatever lay ahead. He had a purpose now, a reason to keep fighting. He had Alara to find. The vastness of interstellar space pressed in on Rusty, an endless black canvas dotted with the cold, distant pinpricks of stars. The journey was a monotonous grind, weeks blurring into a seamless stretch of solitude. Mark's only companions were the hum of the ship's engines and the crackle of the comm system. Loneliness became a constant presence, a heavy weight pressing down on him. The constant threat of mechanical failure added another layer of anxiety. Every strange noise, every flickering light, sent a jolt of fear through him. Space was a harsh mistress, unforgiving and indifferent to the fate of a lone traveler. Navigating the uncharted territories proved to be a constant challenge. The star charts he had salvaged were outdated and incomplete, riddled with inaccuracies and missing information. He had to rely on his instincts, his knowledge of astrophysics, and a healthy dose of luck to avoid collisions with asteroids and other celestial debris. He skirted the edges of dense asteroid fields, weaving through the rocky obstacles with skillful precision. Spatial anomalies, distortions in the fabric of space-time, were another constant hazard. He had to carefully monitor his sensors, constantly adjusting his course to avoid being pulled into these unpredictable vortexes. Then, disaster struck. A critical system on Rusty malfunctioned, sending alarms blaring through the ship. The primary life support system began to fail, the air pressure dropping dangerously low. He had to act fast, or he would suffocate in the vacuum of space. He quickly donned his pressure suit, grabbed his toolkit, and prepared for a risky repair. The problem was located on the exterior of the ship, requiring him to venture out into the cold, unforgiving void. Tethered to Rusty by a thin lifeline, Mark floated outside the ship, the stars swirling around him in dizzying array. The silence was absolute, broken only by the hiss of his oxygen tank. He located the damaged component, a ruptured coolant line. Without coolant, the life support system would overheat and shut down completely. He had to replace the line quickly, before the cold of space seeped into his suit and froze him solid. His fingers, clumsy in the thick gloves, fumbled with the tools. The repair was intricate, requiring precise movements and unwavering concentration. One wrong move could sever the lifeline or damage the suit, sealing his doom. He worked feverishly, his breath clouding the visor of his helmet. Time seemed to stretch and compress, each second feeling like an eternity. As he tightened the final bolt, another, clearer flashback washed over him. He was in a sterile white room, lying in a hospital bed. His body was broken, his mind clouded with pain and confusion. Alara was there, her face a beacon of warmth and compassion. She was tending to his wounds, her hands gentle and reassuring. "You're going to be all right, Mark," she said, her voice soft and soothing. "You're strong and you're a fighter. We're going to help you heal, body and soul." He remembered her smile, the way her eyes crinkled at the corners. He felt safe, protected, cared for. The flashback snapped him back to reality. He was still floating in space, the stars still swirling around him. But something had changed. The memory of Alara's care, her unwavering belief in him, had rekindled his resolve. He was no longer just a survivor, driven by instinct. He was a man on a mission, driven by love and gratitude. He successfully completed the repair, sealing the coolant line and restoring the life support system. With renewed determination, Mark re-entered Rusty and resumed his journey. The ship limped onward, its engines straining against the vastness of space. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the sensors detected something, a faint energy signature emanating from a distant star system. The uncharted planet was within reach. He double-checked the coordinates, his heart pounding with anticipation. As Rusty approached the uncharted planet, the scanners confirmed the presence of a habitable atmosphere. Lush vegetation covered the surface, a vibrant tapestry of green and blue. There were also faint traces of artificial structures, signs of a hidden civilization. He was close. He prepared for landing, his hands trembling with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. He was about to find out if his long and perilous journey had been worth it. He was about to discover the truth about Alara and his own forgotten past. Mark wrestled Rusty through the planet's atmosphere, the ship groaning under the strain. The landing was rough, the aged landing gear struggling to absorb the impact. A jolt ran through the vessel as it slammed onto the surface, sustaining further damage. He was down, but he was stranded. The journey had taken its toll, leaving Rusty in no condition for a quick departure. He'd have to make repairs before even thinking about leaving. He cautiously surveyed the surroundings through the cracked viewport. Towering trees with bioluminescent leaves created an ethereal glow, illuminating the alien landscape. Strange, melodic calls echoed through the dense foliage, a symphony of unfamiliar sounds. He activated the ship's external sensors, detecting no immediate threats. But he knew that appearances could be deceiving. He had to be careful. He disembarked Rusty. Emerging from the ship, Mark was enveloped by the planet's humid air, thick with the scent of exotic flora. The ground was soft and springy beneath his feet, covered in a layer of moss and fallen leaves. He cautiously ventured into the forest, his plasma pistol drawn and his senses on high alert. He moved with the stealth of a seasoned tracker, his eyes scanning for any sign of life. The forest was teeming with strange and wondrous creatures. Bioluminescent insects flitted through the air, their lights painting intricate patterns in the darkness. Small, furry mammals scurried through the undergrowth, their eyes gleaming with curiosity. He even caught a glimpse of a large, winged creature soaring through the canopy, its silhouette outlined against the alien sky. But amidst the natural wonders, Mark also noticed signs of civilization. He discovered a narrow, overgrown path leading deeper into the forest. The path was clearly artificial, its surface paved with smooth, flat stones. He followed the path cautiously, his heart pounding with anticipation. The path snaked through the trees, eventually leading to a clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a small, secluded settlement. The settlement was composed of a cluster of dwellings constructed from natural materials. The structures were simple but well-built, blending seamlessly with the surrounding environment. He could see figures moving about within the settlement, their silhouettes illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns. They were a mixed group, Andromedans alongside other alien refugees. Approaching the settlement cautiously, Mark called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" His voice echoed through the clearing, momentarily silencing the sounds of the forest. The figures within the settlement stopped what they were doing and turned to face him, their expressions wary and guarded. They were clearly not expecting visitors. One of the figures, an elderly Andromedan with wrinkled skin and wise eyes, stepped forward. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "And what do you want?" Mark lowered his plasma pistol, trying to appear non-threatening. "My name is Mark," he said. "I'm looking for someone. Her name is Alara. Nurse Alara, of the Andromedan Confederacy Medical Corps." The elderly Andromedan's eyes narrowed. Ilara, she repeated, her voice barely a whisper. I haven't heard that name in a long time. She exchanged glances with the other settlers, their faces unreadable. I don't know any Ilara, she said finally. You must be mistaken. There's no one here by that name. Mark felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. Had he come all this way for nothing? But I received a letter from her, Mark protested, pulling the faded envelope from his pocket. It was dated over 30 years ago. She said she made me a promise. The elderly Andromedan shook her head. I'm sorry, she said, but you're wasting your time. If there ever was an Ilara here, she's long gone. She died years ago. Mark refused to believe it. He noticed inconsistencies in their stories, subtle cues in their body language that betrayed their deception. They were hiding something, protecting something. He could feel it in his gut. I don't believe you, Mark said, his voice firm. I think you're lying to me. I know Ilara is here. I can feel it. The elderly Andromedan sighed. You're a persistent one, she said. But I'm telling you the truth. There's no Ilara here. Now I suggest you leave. You're not welcome here. As he looked at the faces of the settlers, he could see a flicker of fear in their eyes. They were afraid of something, or someone. He knew that he was getting close to the truth. He wouldn't give up. He would uncover their secrets, even if it meant risking his own life. Ilara was here, he was sure of it. And he would find her. Mark refused to leave, his gut screaming that Ilara was close. He spent the next few days subtly observing the settlers, a silent shadow moving through their routines. He noted their guarded interactions, the way they avoided certain topics, the nervous glances they cast in his direction. He focused on the elderly Andromedan, Lyra, the leader of the settlement. She seemed to carry the weight of a heavy secret. He noticed a pattern in their movements, certain settlers disappearing for hours at a time, returning with a weary, almost haunted look in their eyes. He followed them, staying hidden in the shadows, until he discovered their destination, a hidden path leading away from the settlement, towards the dense, uncharted wilderness. The path was well concealed, camouflaged by overgrown vegetation and natural rock formations. One night, under the cloak of darkness, Mark followed the path himself. It led him deep into the forest, winding through treacherous terrain and dense foliage. After what felt like hours, he reached his destination, a hidden medical facility, built into the side of a rocky cliff face. The facility was concealed behind a holographic projection, making it appear as nothing more than a solid rock wall. But Mark's keen eyes detected the subtle shimmer, the slight distortion in the air. The facility was powered by an advanced energy source, its interior illuminated by soft, bioluminescent panels. He could see advanced medical equipment, stasis pods, and rows of sophisticated monitoring devices. The facility was clearly still in operation, maintained by a dedicated team of medical personnel. This was where the settlers disappeared to. This was the secret they were so desperately trying to protect. Armed with this knowledge, Mark confronted the settlers. He gathered them in the center of the settlement, his voice ringing with authority. I know your secret, he said, his eyes fixed on Lyra. I know about the hidden medical facility. I know you're hiding something from me. I demand to know the truth. Is Ilara in that facility? The settlers were visibly shaken, their faces etched with fear and apprehension. Lyra stepped forward, her expression a mixture of defiance and resignation. You shouldn't have done this, she said, her voice trembling slightly. You've put us all in danger. She signaled to the other settlers, who moved to surround Mark, their hands reaching for hidden weapons. Leave now, Lyra warned. Forget what you've seen. If you stay, you'll regret it. I'm not leaving without Ilara, Mark replied, his hand resting on the plasma pistol at his side. Tell me the truth, or I'll make you tell me. Lyra sighed, her shoulders slumping with defeat. Very well, she said. You want the truth? I'll give you the truth. Ilara is alive. She's in the medical facility. But she's gravely ill. She's in stasis. And she can't be disturbed. Lyra explained that Alara possessed knowledge that the KRYL would kill to obtain. During the war, Alara had stumbled upon a secret KRYL communication detailing a plan to create a weapon that would kill all organic life. The KRYL thought Alara had perished, but she escaped and confided in the settlers, who had kept her hidden ever since. Awakening her would reveal her location to the KRYL. She explained that Mark was also a key piece of this puzzle. He had unknowingly witnessed the initial stages of the KRYL plot, and Alara had promised to protect him and the information he held, even if he forgot. This was the promise she spoke of in the letter. A fuller flashback flooded Mark's mind, Alara shielding him from an energy blast, whispering, "I promised to protect you." This explained the KRYL's focus on him. His arrival had endangered them all. Lyra led Mark through the hidden entrance of the medical facility, the holographic projection shimmering as they passed. Inside, the sterile environment hummed with the quiet efficiency of advanced technology. Lyra guided him through a maze of corridors, past rows of equipment and monitoring stations, until they reached a secluded chamber. In the center of the chamber stood a stasis pod, its clear casing revealing the figure within. It was Alara. Mark hadn't seen her in decades, but he recognized her instantly. Time had etched lines on her face, and her hair had turned silver, but her eyes, even closed, held the same warmth and compassion he remembered from his fragmented flashbacks. She was aged, but still unmistakably Alara. A wave of emotion washed over him, relief, gratitude, and a profound sense of connection. Lyra placed a hand on Mark's shoulder, her voice grave. "She's been in stasis for many years," she said. "Her condition is fragile. Awakening her could be dangerous." Mark nodded, understanding the risks. But he also knew that Alara held the key to his past, and potentially the future of the galaxy. He had to try. Lyra explained the dire situation. The KRYL, though seemingly defeated, were far from eradicated. Remnants of their forces still roamed the galaxy, searching for Alara and the information she possessed. They had been tracking Mark, using him as a pawn to locate her hidden refuge. His arrival had inadvertently exposed the settlement to imminent danger. Suddenly, the alarms blared, their piercing sirens shattering the sterile silence of the medical facility. Red lights flashed, illuminating the panicked faces of the settlers. Lyra's eyes widened in alarm. "They're here," she said, her voice filled with dread. "The KRYL have found us." The settlement was under attack. The KRYL had finally arrived. Without hesitation, Mark sprang into action. He grabbed his plasma pistol and raced out of the medical facility, determined to defend Alara and the settlers from the KRYL onslaught. He knew their tactics, their weaknesses, and their relentless brutality. He had fought them before, and he would fight them again. The settlement was a scene of chaos and carnage. KRYL warriors, their insected bodies clad in chitinous armor, swarmed through the trees, firing plasma weapons and unleashing their razor-sharp claws. The settlers fought back bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. They fell one by one, their cries of pain echoing through the forest. Mark engaged in intense close combat with the KRYL warriors, his plasma pistol spitting bolts of energy. He moved with the agility of a seasoned warrior, dodging attacks and delivering swift, deadly blows. He was protecting Alara's stasis chamber. One settler fell near the chamber. KRYL were about to advance, but Mark took them down. Some of the settlers were killed outright, their bodies lying lifeless amidst the alien foliage. Others were wounded, their limbs torn and their faces contorted in agony. The air filled with the stench of burning flesh and the metallic tang of blood. The cost of protecting Alara's secret was high, a sacrifice made in the name of hope. The fight was brutal, desperate. They had to fight. If they fail, the KRYL win. He looked back at the pod. He was determined to do everything he could. Amidst the swirling chaos of the KRYL attack, a formidable figure emerged from the ranks of the insected warriors, the KRYL leader. Larger and more heavily armored than his subordinates, the leader exuded an aura of brutal authority. His mandibles clicked with anticipation as he surveyed the battlefield, his multifaceted eyes locking on to Mark with predatory focus. A fierce duel was inevitable. The KRYL leader charged, his massive claws slashing through the air with blinding speed. Mark narrowly dodged the attack, the razor-sharp claws tearing through his scavenged clothing. He returned fire with his plasma pistol, but the energy bolts merely glanced off the leader's thick armor, leaving scorch marks but inflicting no real damage. Mark was clearly outmatched. The KRYL leader pressed his advantage, his relentless attacks forcing Mark to retreat. He was stronger, faster, and more agile than Mark, his movements fluid and deadly. Mark was wounded, a gash opening on his arm as he narrowly avoided another claw strike. He stumbled backward, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He was losing ground. Another flashback surged into Mark's consciousness. He was lying on a gurney, drifting in and out of consciousness. Alara, despite being injured herself, shielded him from a KRYL attack, further cementing her commitment. She was weak, but her eyes blazed with fierce protectiveness. "Don't worry, Mark," she whispered, her voice strained but resolute. "I won't let them hurt you." The memory fueled Mark's determination. The sacrifice pushed Mark. He couldn't let Alara's sacrifice be in vain. He had to protect her, even if it meant giving his life. He drew on his reserves of strength and resilience, refusing to surrender. He knew he couldn't win a straight fight, but he could use his ingenuity and knowledge of the environment to gain an advantage. The landscape was a collection of obstacles that he could use to his advantage. Remembering his initial exploration of the planet, Mark led the KRYL leader toward a section of the forest, to an area riddled with natural pitfalls and hidden traps. He had set up these traps during his initial survey of the area, hoping to deter any dangerous wildlife he might encounter. Now they would serve a more critical purpose. The KRYL leader followed Mark, getting closer to these traps. He lured the KRYL leader into a camouflage pit, the insectoid warrior plummeting into the darkness with a startled shriek. The pit was filled with sharpened stakes, impaling the KRYL leader and slowing his advance. He used another trap, a tripwire connected to a cluster of explosive charges. The charges detonated as the KRYL leader stumbled over the wire, showering him with shrapnel and further weakening him. He had to keep going. Weakened and disoriented, the KRYL leader emerged from the forest, his armor shattered and his body riddled with wounds. Mark seized the opportunity, unleashing a final barrage of plasma fire. The energy bolts struck the KRYL leader in his exposed joints and vulnerable underbelly, finally piercing his thick armor. The KRYL leader collapsed to the ground, his body twitching spasmodically. He was defeated. But the victory was short-lived. The remaining KRYL warriors continued their attack, their numbers overwhelming the beleaguered settlers. The battle was far from over. This was just the beginning. He quickly turned around to prepare for the rest of the KRYL, knowing that he may not survive. He had to keep going, though. The settlers were outnumbered, their makeshift defenses crumbling under the relentless KRYL assault. Plasma fire scorched the trees, the air filled with the acrid smell of burning vegetation and alien blood. They realized they couldn't hold out much longer. The KRYL were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. Hope dwindled with each passing moment, replaced by a grim resignation. Lyra, her face etched with worry, gathered the remaining settlers near the entrance to the medical facility. "We can't win this fight," she said, her voice strained but resolute. "We have to focus on protecting Alara. She's our only hope." She proposed a desperate plan, a gamble that could save them all or doom them to certain destruction. It was their only chance. Lyra's plan was to awaken Alara from stasis, and use her knowledge to send a distress signal to any surviving Andromedan forces. Alara possessed the key to unlocking a hidden communication array within the medical facility, a device capable of transmitting a signal across vast distances of space. If they could reach out to the Andromedan Confederacy, they might be able to summon reinforcements, and drive back the KRY. But the plan was fraught with risk. Awakening Elara was a dangerous gamble. Her condition was fragile, her body weakened by decades in stasis. The process could kill her. And even if she survived, there was no guarantee that she would be able to activate the communication array in time. The KRY were closing in, their relentless assault threatening to breach the facility's defenses. Furthermore, there was the risk of Elara's knowledge falling into the wrong hands. If the KRY captured her, they would gain access to the secrets she possessed, secrets that could give them a decisive advantage in their ongoing war against the galaxy. They had to be certain they could protect Elara. It was a lot to ask. Mark, despite his initial reservations, supported Lyra's plan. He trusted Elara's judgment, and he believed that it was their only chance. He had come too far, risked too much, to give up now. He would do whatever it took to protect her and help her save the galaxy. He would stay by her side. "We have to do it," Mark said, his voice firm and resolute. "It's our only hope. We can't let the KRY win." The settlers, their faces etched with determination, nodded in agreement. They were ready to risk everything for the sake of their future, for the sake of Elara. They all wanted to survive, and they all knew it was their only hope. Lyra and Mark began the delicate process of awakening Elara from stasis. They carefully monitored her vital signs, adjusting the parameters of the stasis pod to slowly bring her back to consciousness. The process was agonizingly slow, each passing moment stretching into an eternity. The alarms from outside grew louder. They started the machine to revive Elara. A surge of power coursed through the facility, activating the stasis pod's internal systems. The pod hissed and whirred, its lights flickering as it began to thaw Elara from her frozen slumber. Her vital signs remained stable, but her breathing was shallow and her pulse was weak. They needed to act fast. A moment of sheer terror gripped them as the power grid began to falter. The lights flickered, dimmed, and threatened to go out completely. The stasis pod sputtered, its systems struggling to maintain their functionality. If the power failed completely, Elara would die, and their last hope would be extinguished. The alarms were getting louder. Lyra and Mark exchanged a look of desperation, their faces illuminated by the flickering emergency lights. They had to do something, anything, to keep the power on. Time was running out. The KRY will be coming any minute now. They needed to fix this fast. Lyra began searching for a manual override. Just as the power threatened to fail entirely, Lyra rerouted power from auxiliary systems, diverting energy away from non-essential functions to stabilize the stasis pod. The lights flickered back to life, the pod's systems humming with renewed vigor. Elara's vital signs began to stabilize. Relief washed over them, but they knew their reprieve was temporary. The KRY were still attacking, and the medical facility's defenses were weakening. The fate of Elara and the settlement rested on a knife's edge. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Elara stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, her gaze unfocused and disoriented. She blinked, trying to adjust to the harsh light of the medical facility. She looked around, confusion clouding her features. Decades of stasis had left her weak and vulnerable, her memories fragmented and hazy. She could hear the alarms blaring. It was deafening. Her gaze fell upon Mark, his face etched with concern and hope. She stared at him for a long moment, her brow furrowed in concentration. A flicker of recognition sparked in her eyes, a faint echo of a long-forgotten memory. "Mark?" she whispered, her voice weak and raspy. "Is that really you?" She reached out a trembling hand, her fingers brushing against his cheek. He could feel her warmth. Before Mark could respond, a deafening crash echoed through the facility. The KRY had breached the outer defenses. Their insect forms swarmed through the corridors, their plasma weapons spitting bolts of energy. The medical facility was no longer a sanctuary, it had become a battlefield. Elara's life was in imminent danger. They were running out of time. Elara, despite her weakened state, assessed the situation with remarkable speed and clarity. Her years of medical training and her intimate knowledge of the HFY made her a valuable asset. She remembered that the facility was equipped with a hidden defense system, a network of energy emitters designed to repel intruders. The system had been deactivated long ago, deemed unnecessary in this remote location. She had to get to it. The defense system, Elara said, her voice gaining strength. Activate it. It's our only chance. She pointed towards a control panel hidden behind a medical console. The activation code is. Her memory faltered, the decades in stasis clouding her mind. She struggled to recall the sequence, her brow furrowed in concentration. 3-7-9 Alpha. She rasped. Omega. The numbers. Mark didn't hesitate. He rushed to the control panel and entered the activation code, his fingers flying across the keys. The panel beeped, confirming the sequence. A low hum resonated through the facility, and the air crackled with energy. Hidden emitters within the walls and ceiling began to glow, bathing the facility in an eerie light. A powerful energy blast erupted from the emitters, sweeping through the corridors and vaporizing the HFY warriors in its path. The insective forms were instantly disintegrated, reduced to ash and dust. The blast repelled the HFY, creating a temporary safe zone within the facility. The defense system was working. It was buying them time. Elara watched with satisfaction as the HFY were driven back, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and determination. She had done it. She had saved them, at least for now. She turned to Mark, her gaze filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Mark," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "You came back for me. After all this time." "I promised I would," Mark replied, his voice choked with emotion. "I never forgot you, Elara. Even when I couldn't remember." He stepped forward and took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. Their reunion was brief, but profound. Decades of separation had vanished in that instant. They were together again, united by a bond forged in war and sacrifice. They had to keep moving. "We need to send the signal," Elara said, her voice urgent. "Before they regroup." She led Mark towards a communication console, her steps slow but determined. She began transmitting a distress signal, hoping that there were still Andromedan forces out there, somewhere, that could hear their plea. The fate of the planet, and perhaps the galaxy, rested on the faint signal that was now speeding through the vastness of space. As Elara transmitted the signal, she looked back at Mark, her eyes shining with gratitude. "You've been so brave," she said. The HFY were regrouping outside the facility, preparing for another assault. The distress signal pulsed outwards, a beacon of hope cast into the uncaring void. Elara monitored the transmission, her brow furrowed with concern. The signal's strength was weak, its reach limited by the damaged communication array. There was no guarantee that anyone would receive it, or that help would arrive in time. They were alone, facing an overwhelming force. Even as she clung to that fragile hope, the HFY regrouped. Their guttural screeches echoed through the forest, a chilling prelude to their renewed assault. The energy blast from the defense system had decimated their ranks, but it had not broken their resolve. They were relentless, driven by an insatiable hunger for conquest and a fanatical devotion to their cause. The settlers had to prepare. The HFY launched a second, more determined attack on the medical facility. They swarmed through the trees, their plasma weapons blazing, their claws tearing at the reinforced walls. The defense system continued to operate, vaporizing any HFY that ventured too close, but the insectoid warriors were learning, adapting their tactics to circumvent the energy emitters. Mark, Elara, and the remaining settlers fought side by side, their courage fueled by desperation and a shared determination to survive. Mark, using his combat expertise, coordinated their defense, directing their fire and positioning them strategically to maximize their effectiveness. Their defense, though, was beginning to weaken. Elara, despite her weakened state, moved among the wounded, her medical expertise invaluable. She tended to their injuries, offering words of comfort and encouragement, bolstering their morale. Her presence was a source of strength, a reminder of what they were fighting for. She was able to use a simple medkit to heal many. The battle raged on, the fate of the settlement hanging in the balance. The KRY were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. The settlers were exhausted, their ammunition dwindling. The defense system was faltering, its energy reserves running low. It seemed that their last stand was imminent. They began to wonder if there was any point to continue fighting. A small group of KRY, exploiting a weakness in the facility's defenses, managed to infiltrate the building. They slipped through a ventilation shaft, bypassing the energy emitters and gaining access to the interior. They were now a direct threat to Alara, their claws poised to strike. They needed to eliminate them quickly. Mark, sensing the danger, reacted swiftly. He abandoned his position at the front lines and charged into the facility, his plasma pistol blazing. He confronted the infiltrating KRY in a narrow corridor, engaging them in a desperate hand-to-hand battle. The corridor was small. He fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, his movements driven by instinct and desperation. He dodged, weaved, and parried, his plasma pistol spitting bolts of energy. The KRY warriors lunged at him, their claws tearing at his flesh. He felt a searing pain as one of the claws ripped through his arm, but he ignored the pain, his focus solely on protecting Alara. He knew what he was fighting for. He managed to take down 2 of the KRY warriors, his plasma bolts piercing their chitinous armor. But the 3rd KRY warrior was too fast, too strong. It knocked Mark to the ground, pinning him beneath its weight. The KRY warrior raised its claws, preparing to deliver the killing blow. He was vulnerable. Just as the KRY warrior was about to strike, Alara intervened. She had followed Mark into the facility, determined to protect him. She grabbed a medical instrument, a sharp, pointed scalpel, and stabbed the KRY warrior in its vulnerable neck joint. The KRY warrior convulsed, its body twitching as it collapsed on top of Mark. They had survived, but barely. As Mark gasped for air, pinned beneath the KRY warrior, a chillingly familiar figure emerged from the shadows, the KRY commander from their previous encounter. His chitinous armor was scarred and damaged, a testament to their earlier clash, but his multifaceted eyes burned with unwavering malice. He had come for Alara, and nothing would stand in his way. The KRY commander strode towards them, his heavy footsteps echoing through the facility. He surveyed the scene with cold indifference, his gaze lingering on Mark with contempt. "You have proven to be a persistent annoyance, human," he hissed, his voice a rasping growl. "But your efforts are futile. Alara will be ours." He turned towards Alara, his mandibles clicking with anticipation. Mark, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate need to protect Alara, struggled to rise. He managed to shove the dead KRY warrior off his body, his muscles screaming in protest. He stumbled to his feet, his arm throbbing with pain. He stood between Alara and the KRY commander, his body a shield against the impending threat. "You're not getting her," Mark growled, his voice filled with defiance. "I won't let you." The KRY commander chuckled, a harsh, grating sound. "You are in no condition to challenge me, human. Your strength is failing. Your spirit is broken. You are nothing but a pathetic remnant of a dying race." He extended his claws. A fierce battle erupted between Mark and the KRY commander, a clash of desperation and unrelenting force. Mark, despite his injuries, fought with a ferocity born of love and loyalty. He dodged, weaved, and parried, his movements fueled by adrenaline and a refusal to surrender. He would not let this be the end. But the KRY commander was too strong, too skilled. He parried Mark's attacks with ease, his claws slashing through the air with blinding speed. Mark was driven back, his body battered and bruised. He felt a searing pain as one of the commander's claws ripped through his side, tearing through flesh and bone. He wouldn't give up. The KRY commander had the upper hand, and was about to end Mark's life. He raised his claws high, preparing to deliver the final blow. Mark closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable. This was it. He had failed. He couldn't get back up. Just as the KRYL commander was about to strike, Elara intervened. Drawing upon her medical knowledge, she recalled a vulnerability in the KRYL commander's physiology, a nerve cluster located near his mandibles. With a swift and precise movement, she plunged a syringe filled with a potent paralytic agent into the KRYL commander's neck. The KRYL commander stiffened, his body convulsing. The paralytic agent coursed through his veins, shutting down his nervous system. He stumbled backward, his claws dropping to his side. He could no longer move, his body paralyzed. Elara used her opportunity. Seeing their leader incapacitated, the remaining KRYL warriors panicked. Their morale shattered, they abandoned their attack and fled from the facility, retreating into the forest. Elara and Mark and the settlers had done it. The battle was over. They had survived, against all odds. But the war was not. The KRYL were gone, but the settlers knew that they would return. The KRYL would be back. It was only a matter of time. The distress signal had been sent, but there was no guarantee that it had been received. The settlers anxiously awaited a response, their hopes dwindling with each passing moment. The wait began. Elara and Mark had to keep fighting. They couldn't let the KRYL win. The tense days that followed were an exercise in endurance. Every rustle of leaves, every distant screech, sent a jolt of fear through the settlement. Sleep was fitful, punctuated by nightmares of KRYL warriors and the chilling click of their mandibles. The settlers patrolled the perimeter, their faces etched with exhaustion and worry. They were living on borrowed time, waiting for the inevitable return of the KRYL. As the days stretched into a week, hope began to dwindle. The promised rescue seemed increasingly unlikely, a distant fantasy fading with each sunrise. Some settlers began to lose faith, their spirits crushed by the weight of their predicament. They questioned whether their sacrifices had been in vain, whether Elara's knowledge was worth the price they were paying. They thought they should have just left. Elara, despite her weakened state, became a beacon of strength for the dwindling community. She moved among the settlers, offering words of comfort and reassurance. She reminded them of the importance of their resilience, of their unwavering commitment to a better future. She shared stories of her past, of her experiences during the war, and of the countless acts of kindness and courage she had witnessed. She spoke of the Andromedan Confederacy, of its noble ideals and its unwavering dedication to peace and justice. She reminded them that they were not alone, that there were still forces in the galaxy fighting for what was right. Her words rekindled a spark of hope in their hearts, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the light of compassion could still shine through. They still had to keep fighting. Just when all hope seemed lost, a faint signal flickered across the communication console. Elara rushed to the console, her heart pounding with anticipation. The signal was weak, barely audible above the static, but it was there. Someone had received their distress call. An Andromedan warship was on its way. After all this time, they were coming. The news spread through the settlement like wildfire, igniting a wave of elation. The settlers cheered, their faces radiant with joy and relief. They embraced each other, tears streaming down their cheeks. Their long ordeal was finally coming to an end. The Andromedans were coming to save them. They were not going to die. The Andromedan warship emerged from hyperspace, its sleek, silver hull gleaming in the light of the alien sun. It swiftly engaged the remaining KRYL forces in orbit, unleashing a barrage of energy weapons. The KRYL ships were quickly overwhelmed, their defenses crumbling under the superior firepower of the Andromedan vessel. The battle was swift and decisive. With the KRYL threat neutralized, the Andromedan warship descended towards the planet's surface, landing near the settlement. A ramp extended from the ship, and a contingent of Andromedan soldiers emerged, their faces grim but determined. They were heavily armed and well equipped, ready to secure the area and provide assistance to the settlers. The settlers greeted the Andromedans with open arms, their hearts overflowing with gratitude. They had been rescued, their prayers answered. The Andromedans provided medical assistance to the wounded, distributing supplies and offering words of comfort. They were saviors in shining armor, a testament to the enduring power of hope and compassion. Alara watched with tear-filled eyes as the Andromedans tended to the settlers. She had done it. She had saved them all. The HFY were defeated. The war was over. They could start rebuilding. They had survived. They could build a new life. They could all survive and live in peace. Now, they just needed to get back to Earth. They will get there eventually. They will rebuild and be happy. And just like that, the long nightmare was over. The aftermath of the battle was a flurry of activity. Andromedan medics tended to the wounded, their advanced technology mending broken bones and healing grievous injuries. The dead were honored in a solemn ceremony, their names etched into a memorial stone erected at the heart of the settlement. The settlers, their spirits buoyed by the arrival of the Andromedans, began the arduous task of rebuilding their homes and lives. Alara, under the watchful care of the Andromedan medics, began to regain her strength. The decades in stasis had taken their toll, leaving her body weak and frail, but her spirit remained strong. She spent her days assisting the medics, sharing her knowledge and expertise, and offering comfort to the wounded. She would be okay now. Mark, his arms still in a sling, watched as Alara recovered. He felt a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. He had found what he was searching for, a sense of purpose and belonging. He had rediscovered his past and forged a new future. The war had taken so much from him, but it had also led him to Alara and this small community of survivors. As the days passed, Mark wrestled with a difficult decision. Should he return to Earth, to the ruins of his former life? Or should he stay on this remote planet, with Alara and the settlers, and help them build a new community? He weighed the options carefully, considering the risks and rewards of each path. In the end, the choice was clear. He had nothing left for him on Earth. His family was gone, his friends were gone, and his home was gone. But here on this planet, he had found a new family, a new purpose, and a new home. He would stay. He would stay with Alara and the settlers, and help them build a new life, free from the threat of the HFY and with the support of the Andromedan Confederacy. He told Alara of his decision. She smiled, her eyes shining with happiness. "I knew you would stay, Mark," she said, her voice soft and warm. "You belong here, with us. You're one of us now." He had a community here. The settlers, with the assistance of the Andromedans, began to transform their settlement into a thriving community. They constructed new homes, cultivated the land, and established schools and hospitals. They learned from each other, sharing their knowledge and experiences, creating a unique blend of cultures and traditions. They were able to coexist. They built a society based on compassion, cooperation, and respect, a stark contrast to the brutal, dog-eat-dog world they had left behind. They had created a haven, a sanctuary where hope could flourish and dreams could take flight. They had finally found peace. Mark was ready. One evening, as the sun set over the alien landscape, Alara and Mark stood together on a hilltop overlooking the settlement. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter and music, a testament to the community's resilience and spirit. They had survived. Alara turned to Mark, her eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Thank you, Mark," she said. "You came back for me. You saved us all. You didn't lose everything in the war, because you found yourself." Mark smiled, his heart overflowing with emotion. He reached out and took her hand, his fingers intertwining with hers. They were together, and they would face the future, whatever it may hold, together. If you enjoyed this story of hope and resilience in a war-torn future, subscribe for more exciting HFY narratives. And click here to watch our next video, a thrilling tale of first contact gone wrong.